Summer's officially here, and the bikini sale at shackshop.us is happening right now. Get hot styles, bold prints, and perfect fits, all on sale for a limited time. Whether you're beach-bound or poolside, we've got the bikini that makes you feel confident, cute, and totally summer-ready. So don't wait. Head to shackshop.us and shop the sale before it ends. That's shackshop.us, your new favorite bikini spot.
When art, activism, and tragedy collide. The Sundance Film Festival has long been a home for provocative storytelling, cultural commentary, and political expression. But this year, the spotlight shifted from cinema to conflict after actresses Olivia Wilde and Natalie Portman used the high-profile festival to publicly protest U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, in the wake of a fatal shooting in Minneapolis. At the center of the controversy is the death of 37-year-old Alex Preddy, who was killed during a confrontation involving federal immigration agents. His death marked the second fatal shooting connected to anti-ICE protests in Minneapolis within the same month, a grim milestone that has intensified scrutiny of federal enforcement practices, protest safety, and political rhetoric. For supporters of the celebrities, the message was clear: ICE has become an abusive and dangerous arm of government power that must be dismantled. For critics, the protest represented another example of wealthy Hollywood figures oversimplifying complex law enforcement realities while inflaming public distrust. What unfolded at Sundance was not just a red carpet moment, it was a microcosm of a much larger national debate. Olivia Wilde's message, "We can't normalize this." While promoting her film, The Invite, Olivia Wilde appeared on the Sundance red carpet wearing a black pin emblazoned with the words, "ICE out." The symbol was subtle but unmistakable, and it quickly became one of the most talked about moments of the festival. Speaking to reporters, Wilde framed her protest as a moral response to what she described as an escalating crisis in America. She acknowledged the celebratory nature of Sundance, but argued that art cannot be separated from reality. In her view, continuing business as usual while people are dying during law enforcement encounters would amount to silent complicity. Wilde described the situation as appalling, emphasizing that repeated images of death, whether online, in news footage, or on social media, should never be accepted as normal. Her strongest criticism was reserved for ICE itself, which she labeled a criminal organization, arguing that public pressure and cultural delegitimization are necessary to force reform or abolition. Supporters' perspective: celebrity voices as moral amplifiers. Those who applauded Wilde's stance argue that celebrities have both the right and responsibility to use their platforms to call attention to injustice. Supporters point out that many Americans feel powerless in the face of federal institutions. When public figures speak out, they argue, it amplifies voices that might otherwise be ignored. From this perspective, the ICE out pin is not an attack on individual officers, but a protest against what critics see as systemic failures: aggressive enforcement tactics, lack of accountability, and policies that blur the line between immigration control and civil rights violations. Many also note that protests against ICE are not new and have intensified since changes to immigration enforcement priorities in recent years. Critics' perspective: oversimplification and dangerous rhetoric. Opponents of the protest argue that Wilde's comments, particularly her characterization of ICE as criminal, cross a line from advocacy into misinformation. Critics emphasize that ICE is a legally authorized federal agency tasked with enforcing immigration laws passed by Congress and upheld by federal courts. Labeling the entire organization as illegitimate, they argue, undermines public trust in the rule of law. Some law enforcement advocates warn that inflammatory rhetoric contributes to rising hostility towards officers, increasing the risk of violent confrontations during protests. Others accuse Hollywood activists of ignoring nuance, arguing that tragedies involving law enforcement require investigation, not immediate ideological conclusions. For these critics, the issue isn't whether reform is needed, it's whether blanket condemnation helps or harms public safety. Natalie Portman joins the protest. Natalie Portman echoed Wilde's sentiments while promoting her film The Gallerist, also wearing an ICE out pin during her Sundance appearances. Portman described the moment as devastating, stating that it was impossible to celebrate artistic achievements without acknowledging the pain unfolding across the country. She framed her criticism of ICE alongside praise for grassroots activism, highlighting Americans who are showing up for each other and protecting one another's rights. Portman's remarks struck a more measured tone, focusing on community resilience even as she condemned what she described as ICE's brutality. Social media reaction: applause and outrage. Online reaction was swift and polarized. Supporters flooded social platforms with praise, calling the actresses brave, compassionate, and necessary voices in a dangerous time. Many argued that silence from influential figures would be far more irresponsible. Critics, however, accused the actresses of virtue signaling and hypocrisy, pointing out that Hollywood elites live far removed from the communities most affected by immigration enforcement. Calls for boycotts circulated alongside mocking commentary, underscoring the cultural divide that now defines nearly every political conversation. The broader context: violence, protests, and public safety. The Sundance protests occurred amid heightened tensions nationwide. Just one day earlier, Representative Maxwell Frost of Florida reported being assaulted at a Sundance-related event in what he described as a racially charged incident. Law enforcement later confirmed an arrest, stating that the suspect unlawfully entered a private party and assaulted both Frost and another attendee. For some, the incident reinforced concerns about rising political violence and radicalization. For others, it illustrated the dangerous environment surrounding protests and counter-protests alike.
Golden Globes precedent, a growing movement. This was not the first time celebrities used award season visibility to protest ICE. Earlier this month, multiple stars wore "Be Good" and "ICE Out" pins at the Golden Globes, honoring victims of past enforcement-related deaths. Supporters saw a coordinated moral stand. Critics saw an echo chamber detached from legal reality. Legal reality check: what ICE is and isn't. Fact check and legal context. ICE is a federal agency under the Department of Homeland Security. Its authority derives from congressional statutes and federal immigration law. Agents are legally empowered to conduct arrests and enforcement operations. Fatal encounters involving agents are subject to internal review and, when applicable, independent investigation. Labeling ICE as criminal is a political statement, not a legal designation. Civil rights organizations have documented cases of misconduct and excessive force, while government reviews have also cleared agents in other cases. The legal debate centers on accountability and oversight, not the agency's existence. The middle ground: reform versus abolition. A growing number of Americans fall somewhere between the extremes. They acknowledge serious concerns about enforcement tactics, while rejecting calls to abolish ICE outright. Many support reforms such as clearer use of force standards, independent oversight boards, body camera mandates, narrower enforcement priorities, greater transparency after critical incidents. This middle position often gets drowned out by louder voices on both sides. Why this moment matters. The Sundance controversy is less about pins on a dress and more about how America processes tragedy. It raises difficult questions. Who gets to speak for justice? How much influence should celebrities wield? Can reform happen without demonization? Does protest rhetoric help prevent violence or inflame it? There are no easy answers. Conclusion: a cultural crossroads. Olivia Wilde and Natalie Portman didn't create America's immigration debate, but they helped spotlight how raw, emotional, and divided it has become. Their protest resonated deeply with supporters who see ICE as a symbol of government overreach. It enraged critics who view the agency as a necessary, if imperfect, tool of law enforcement. Both reactions reflect real fears, real values, and real consequences. At Sundance, art once again mirrored reality, not as a comforting escape, but as an uncomfortable reckoning.